Mr. Copanas. So would you, I know we don't need to introduce ourselves, you know who we are. Would you give us an overview, please,
Sure.
of your department?
The city clerk's office basically is the linchpin office between the executive and legislative branch. A lot of people don't realize this. We're the only ones that control the city seal. And the city seal has to go on a lot of documents. And technically, I'm the only notary the mayor has for approving things. The city clerk must attest to all documents that the mayor signs to ensure that the common council has taken action, that legislation was passed. And so that's why we call ourselves a linchpin, because you know, we work both with the administration and obviously we're part of the legislative branch. Our functions are, as you know, letters are submitted to the city clerk by the administration or by the common council, and those letters are then processed working with the law department into legislation, and every 2 weeks we present the book to you, which you received earlier today. And we walk the entire legislative process through from the very beginning to the very end. And once you vote, it's my responsibility to transmit your legislation to the mayor. The mayor has 10 days on most ordinances in which to act. If the mayor doesn't act within 10 days, the ordinance becomes law without any action from the mayor. The mayor has to either affirmatively assign it or veto it within 10 days. Local laws, they have 30 days, but other ordinances, 10 days. So it's important for me and my office, to get them over to the mayor as soon as possible. We do that. Then when the mayor signs them, we have to certify all the legislation and send it out to the various people that it affects. So if it's a special permit, we send it to the person who applied. We send it to various departments. So it doesn't just go to one place. Finance gets every piece of legislation. Law gets every piece. And then depending on which department it is, we make sure Parks gets their legislation, DPW gets theirs, you know, make sure it gets out, distributed. And then of course we keep a record of all this going through the year. And in addition to the legislative function, the city clerk is assigned things by the state of New York. Some of the things we're assigned are marriage licenses, conservation licenses, and dog licenses. In addition to that, they like to make the city clerk's office do things that they don't want to have their own offices handle. For example, anyone applying for a liquor license or renewal has to apply through the city clerk. Now you apply to the ABC board, but you apply through the city clerk. My job then is to work with the police department and the law department to determine if the person applying has a criminal record. Is there a problem? Is the site a problem? You know, has the site been a problem? And the police and law get back to me and report back to me, and then if there's no problem, I sign off on it and send it to the state. A few years back, they changed the open container law to make the city clerk responsible for signing off on the open container law. People still go to the police department to fill out forms. Let's say you're having a festival. It doesn't mean just downtown. We do Coleman's, for example, where they have the parking lot thing. So any group that uses alcohol outside of their business has to have the open container law of the city of Syracuse waived. They would go to the Syracuse Police Department and they would get a form. Fill out the form is sent to the city clerk. And then once again, our office will review the request with the law department and with the police department to make sure there are no problems. When they don't have any objections, we waive the open container law for festivals and different things that go on in the city. So these are some of the things we do, and I just thought I'd give you a quick overview if you have any questions about that. So what we're doing right now, though, is we're in the process of researching a company that will help us increase the number of dog licenses in the city. Currently, we're probably licensing about 20% of the actual dogs that are in the city on analysis. Many years ago, I'd asked the fire department, we stopped the process, but to add a question on their list when they go check fire detectors to see if you had a pet in the house and way to kind of do a census of dogs. And for a period of time, that was being done. I don't know why it got dropped. That would help us get an idea of how many animals are there, plus it helps the fire department to know if there's animals in the property if they have to have a call there. And the fire department, as you probably know, basically hits every residential property in the city to check for smoke detectors and everything over time. So this company that we're looking at right now and doing our due diligence to review is called DocuPet, and they're out of Canada. And what they do to try to encourage involvement is both a carrot and a stick, but it's mostly a carrot. They work with private companies so that if you get your dog license, you might get coupons for buying dog food, or they'll have promotional things, and they help you to raise your participation in dog licensing. The way they get paid, which is kind of unique, is they get a cut of what they raise, basically. So there's a baseline where we start, and then they get a percentage of all the additional money that is raised through their efforts. And that's how the contract is basically funded. Right now I'm working with the law department, and I'm working with the new administration. As you know, dog licensing is done by the city clerk, and dog control is done by the Parks Department, which is part of the administration. So I wanted to wait. This was originally, Dave Mankiewicz approached me with this company last fall, and we thought about advancing it, but it was the end of the former administration, and we thought it would be better to get buy-in from the new administration because it works in concert with dog control. So we waited till this year, and we talked to Greg Lowe and Christy Elliott, and they're working with me to vet this program to determine whether or not it's a good idea. Working with the law department to look at the contracts right now. And obviously, if a decision is made to go forward, I'd be telling the council about that when it gets to that point. But we are trying to look for a way that will, first, from my perspective, license more dogs, which is important to do. It might also generate some more income from the city, but the main motivation is to get the dogs licensed.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask one quick question, and I'm gonna get out of the way and let my colleagues have it. But what I wanted to ask you, I'm looking at the temporary services, the clerk one flat.
Right.
But
we used that position, they're twofold. As you may know, back in 2010, when there was an early retirement program, when I first started as city clerk, a lifetime ago, there were 4 licensing clerks to do the same job that we're doing now. And when Mayor Young was there, we reduced it to 3. And we could manage with 3. 4 was a luxury, 3 was okay. Then Mayor Minor said at the time in 2010, if there was early retirement, you weren't going to be able to fill all your positions. So we're now going from 4 originally in 1992 to 2 people doing the same level of work. So this part-time person helps to fill in vacations, helps to answer the phones. When you have to get a marriage license, both of you have to appear together. That means between 11 and 2 is our busiest time, our lunch hour, and we have to cover, that desk. And having the seasonal help helps us to fill in vacations and fill in that. So that's a part-time position that has no benefits other than the salary. So it does save the city money from having to hire a full-time position.
okay, so that's the same. That's the one that's over on this line, also, right?
I believe so.
Temporary services part-time, 19,742. Okay. Councilor Allen.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Councilor Bay.
No questions.
Councilor Rudd. Councilor Thompson.
John, what would you add, if you could add to this?
Well, one other thing I'd like to share with you that we do, because it's something that happens in mostly town clerks and people get confused. We're like an information office. We handle an awful lot of calls. When people don't know where to call, they'll call the clerk's office and say, do you take my taxes? Because in a lot of towns they do that. So I come from a small family business orientation, and we do a very good job at making sure we direct people where they have to go. We just don't give them a phone number. We try to find out what they want. So we do a lot of direct work with constituents, not about just city clerk items, but city items in general. And those calls, I got to be honest with you, have been increasing in the new administration. Now, I don't know if it's because the mayor's office doesn't have a receptionist or not, but there's no question the level of calls we're getting for information have gone up dramatically. And as a result, it takes up staff time to do those things right. So, we're doing our job, but at that, it is if those levels of calls continue, it might become a problem.
So, but beyond that, do you have anything that you would like to see in here that isn't in here, or is necessity for the job?
Well, we have to do our part with the city's difficult financial situation, and that's why we're dealing with the part-time person. Ideally, in order to cover people's lunches and vacations and everything, I would really need a 3rd full-time person, but realizing the city is not in a position to do that, we're doing the best we can with the people we have.
Councilor Green. Councilor Boyle.
I'm all set.
I have Councilor Kern.
No, I don't have any questions for the clerk.
Well, I have one, and then Mr. Copanas, I'm going to let you go. let me ask you this question. Being that now the tablets have been made available to us, and I know that we have to make, you were making the books, is that gonna eliminate?
Well, I was talking to Greg Lowe about it. I guess we're gonna start, when he sends me a memorandum, I'm not gonna make the books for the department heads, because we don't make them just for the council, we make them for department heads. So that's gonna be eliminated, which will help. By law, under the city charter, I have to present the legislation to you in writing, in front of you, when you vote. So the charter would have to be changed, and New York State won't accept anything electronically either. So when I send legislation there or anything, it has to be done in paper, and I have to have a seal on it and certify it. So we'd have to change the laws to be able to get rid of the paper agenda. Certainly will help, because but you guys have had it electronically for years. It's just that you can use it on your tablet now. I mean, I've been delivering it to you electronically, even though we didn't have tablets. So what'll happen is it'll be loaded on your tablet, and you'll have the convenience of that, obviously. But unless legislation is changed, I do have to produce at least 10 books for the counselors in order to that's why sometimes you'll notice that I say you're voting on the item we handed out, not the one in the book, because it's supposed to be clear to you what you're voting on and that it's in writing in front of you. The reason this is more difficult than, let's say, the county ledge is we don't have a strong committee structure. In the Onondaga County Legislature, everything that gets in front of the county ledge goes through its appropriate committee. That committee then votes it out. You know then it's the legislation that's going to be acted on by the council and or by the county ledge. The only way that can change is on a motion on the floor. Our system is designed where literally up till you vote, things can be changed. And as a result of that, I have to keep track of everything that's going on. Like if you ask questions at the study session and then they come back and change the legislation, I have to follow up on that, make sure that that legislation was changed, make sure it's in front of you when you vote in the final form. So it makes it more difficult, because how could I do that and keep up electronically at the same time? So and the interesting thing is this happens on the most consequential legislation. It's not happening on a land bank purchase, it's happening on issues that are important. So somebody could say, well, gee, the clerk didn't notify us publicly about this change because it happened at 5 minutes to 1 and they voted at 1 o'clock. You know, I mean, that's part of the problem we have, is that there's nothing that stops change to occur right up to the vote.
Okay. And one more question on that. So I heard you say that you have to continue to produce the books. So you know how when you come in and at the meeting, you give us the new one and say, go buy this one? You know how you give us a packet and say, use this one now instead of the book?
What happens is that, like today, in the book that you have, there's 2 ordinances missing. We never get the bond ordinance because they have to go to bond council, so they never make the book. The other ordinance, unfortunately, that's not in there is the adjudication one that wasn't ready to make the book. So what will happen is between tomorrow's study session and Monday, they will be produced. I will get them, and I give you a package, and what I give you is what isn't in the book, or if something has changed that was in the book. So that's what your handout is only stuff that didn't make the book. Even though there's a short title there's a letter, there sometimes isn't legislation, but it has to be in final form for you to vote on Monday, so that's why on Monday I hand you the items that didn't make the book.
And I think that's where I was going. You couldn't just present the packages to us instead of making those books?
No, well, the charter says you have to have it in written form in front of you, written final
Packets are
form.
written form.
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
You mean, can the first draft be given to us electronically and then the final draft before we
In the
vote,
packet.
rather than getting 2?
Oh, well, I don't reproduce the book, I just reproduce what's missing
Right.
from the book. Okay,
Right.
I mean, if I produce the book again, I agree with you, so don't you think you'd like to have the ability to have the book from Wednesday on? If you don't want it, if it's the, you know, because if you don't want it, I don't have to do it until Monday, but, you know.
I suggested to Greg Lowe, and my opinion is that we continue with the book for a while at least, and look at the concerns that you have statewide. But until the counselors are, I think, comfortable utilizing the laptops and making sure that it does everything that we need it to do. I've played with mine a little bit. I'm not positive that it does everything that I need it to do in order for me to, you know, I want to be able to write on it and make notes. Otherwise, I got to keep a separate pad of paper next to me, write, and then cross-reference. And I want it to be able to index so that I can read this and not have to go back and scroll through 100 pages to get back to the
Okay,
first
but not to be the
land
dead
bank thing
horse
that
to
we have.
death, I'm gonna go back to what I said before. Because when we're given the packets, when there's supplemental things added, that packet has everything that's in that book.
No, it doesn't, Counselor. It only has what wasn't in the book or if something was changed. What I give you on Monday is only this thick. Your book is this thick. It only has what didn't make the book or if something changed between Wednesday and Monday.
I gotta go back to my packet. Okay.
Well, anyways, those are my thoughts.
All right. Anything else?
But we are, to your point, we are going to save a lot of paper because Mr. Lowe isn't going to have me produce the books for the department heads anymore. Now watch what will happen. You're going to get calls asking for them to get books. Once they don't have the book, they're going to want it.
That's a good first step.
Okay.
Well, I also do your council budget. Do you want me to move on to that?
Yeah,
Or
might as well keep moving.
Okay. What's happened in recent couple of years now is that we've gone to a different system of budgeting where the budget office basically helps us do the budget for my office and for the council. The council's on page 59. So this was the budget I was advised to put in for the most part, but there are some minor changes from what was submitted. But you know, you can ask whatever questions you want. I'd be happy to answer what I know. Based on the Common Council rules that you adopt at the organizational meeting, you've designated me to be the supervisor of your budget administration. Obviously, you are in charge of your staff as far as hiring and firing, but I've been assigned under the rules to supervise the office, make the purchases, develop the budget, and things like that.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
These are actually old questions, but I figure I ask again. So let's consider them questions for everybody at the table, including clerk. I'm still trying to find out why the council doesn't have its own postage and freight line. Councilors are elected. People always reach out to them. We have no ability for mail correspondence, and it's hard sometimes. You know, I remember a couple of years ago when I was attempting to send out some mail, and the administration came and told me, "Oh, you didn't budget for that." You know, so considering that, not for nothing, the electeds are probably the most sought after people for questions and answers. It doesn't make sense to me that we don't have a postage and freight budget.
Up until the minor administration, that has never been a problem, and I've been here since the Alexander. So the council has just as much right as any department to access the mail. Why the minor administration told you couldn't, I don't know. We're treated as a department, and we have mailing privileges to send out mail. We had a counselor once, I'm not going to name him, who would literally write letters to every sixth grader that graduated from sixth grade. You know, and anyone who contacted the office got a letter. So, you know, the bottom line is that was not stopped, and that, you know, I think that it obviously has to be related to your council work, but assuming it's related to what you do as a counselor, I don't see how there's any limitation on your ability to mail. That's my understanding there is.
Yeah, I'm kind of, you know, I agree with you 100%, and I'm stating this much just for the benefit of our colleagues. We become limited in our performance in that respect, certainly with communication, so that's something I'm a little concerned about.
There is a special objects of expense account called postage, and anything that goes down through the department, the Treasury Department, gets mailed out of there through Onondaga County.
I use it for everything I do, like mailing out marriage licenses and things like that. No one ever tells me you're limited, stop mailing out marriage license or.
Well, I'm just repeating what is stated to me by the previous chief of staff of the mayor.
I remember the issue, and I remember
that,
taking
right.
issue with them on it.
Yeah, we both had issue with it because it just didn't seem practical. But just, you know, something. My other.
I was told that too. I mean, I've only been here for a few months, but I was trying to mail out a letter, in response to a constituent, and I was told the same thing as far as we don't have postage.
Who told you that?
I'll tell you.
Okay, I mean, if it was our staff, I need to correct them, because anyone who works in the council office
Let
should
me
mail.
state for the record, though, I think part of what you're saying is correct, that sometimes, and I'm gonna be blunt here, you know, persons and even persons who are still fairly new to City Hall somehow sees the council as a department. And I think I often make the argument that it has to be absolutely clear, you know, no disrespect to anybody else, but we're not the mayor's staff, we're his peers. And a lot of times it gets misconstrued.
Right. Well, I don't think this would be a popular position, but my position is that everybody in the city works for the council. I mean, because you control the purse strings. So let me give you an example. When we had legal funds and there was a dispute between Mayor Minor, when she was a councilor, and Mayor Driscoll, when Councilor Minor and Mayor Driscoll had a dispute over the whether to appeal the Destiny or legal suit, the council spent $100,000 in legal fees. They only had 20. Didn't matter. You can spend $100,000. You can find the money and move it to your account anytime you want. You know, there's nothing that precludes the council to overspend their account if they have to do it, because you control the purse strings on every single part of the city budget.
Well, that was the purpose of my questioning, to get that kind of communication, which leads to my next statement. I've always made the argument that I thought the travel, training, and development budget in the council should be larger, not only for our staff, but even for incoming councilors who may not have any, obviously may not, won't have experience with writing legislation. But that's also something, if not for this budget, for future consideration, because, to allow opportunity for incoming councilors, even existing councilors, to have access to training legislatively and otherwise is an ultimate benefit to our constituents. Thank you.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Counselor, and as you may know, let me just point a couple changes. I was asked to put in money for office equipment and furnishings. You'll see there's $25,000 in new funding in that position, in that area. And that's also to help pay for microphones in the council chamber, which we have to cost out, new microphones. And then the legal charges are not what I put in, but they're there. In the professional services line, they're a little lower than I submitted, but that $30,000 is subject to being moved within your budget any way you want to move it. So if you wanted to move some of it to travel, training, and development, you could. You could move it to postage, but I don't think you have to. And,
Just a quick correction, that 30,000, 25,000 is for legal and 5,000 is for next year's Youth Advisory Council.
Right, that's right, I'm sorry, 25,000 is for legal. So the 25,000 is, subject to being moved within your budget if you want to.
Counselor Bay, y'all done? You good? Yeah. Counselor Allen?
I do have one question. The Secretary to Common Council, we have 2 people listed here, but are we
One
not counting
position-
the part-time position?
We don't have a part-time
With
position.
is Jessica, isn't she part-time or is she
No,
full-time?
she will be first, full-time. In
Okay.
order to, and I think your majority leader is going to talk about this, in order to assist the budget director, because she was the part-time secretary to the budget director, and because of this is such a difficult time, that we let her continue her part-time work
Okay.
in the budget office, and she's going to transition full-time into our office when the budget is over.
Okay.
Is that correct? So we're just trying to assist them by not leaving Mary without somebody who's been working for her for a long time.
Okay.
She said we'd find a little more in our budget for it.
Right. So what we've done, though, just to point out a difference, is that once the former secretary became the president's assistant, we did make a slight, because of her longevity, we made a slight increase. So you'll see that one position has moved up slightly, and the other 2 are secretaries paid at the same rate.
And who is the administrative officer?
That's Jim.
That's Jim? Okay.
Counselor Rudd, you have anything?
Oh, I'm all set.
Counselor Thompson?
Oh, excuse me. No, the administrative officer, I apologize, is Carmelita.
Okay.
The legislative aide is Jim. I'm sorry.
Okay, gotcha.
And then there's 2 secretaries. So the administrative officer title is the person who
Is
works for the
Carmelita.
council president.
Okay.
Counselor Green?
No, thank you.
So I'm sorry, the microphones that were mentioned, are those coming out of?
That's out of the equipment, office of furnishings and equipment line that we added $25,000 to, if we have to use that. for that purpose.
No, the new microphones are gonna be paid out from the grant.
Okay, well then that money's there for new furniture or new things you want to buy for the office.
So who decides on the, like, training and development?
Well, no one told me to increase it, so that's the amount we've had for years.
No, I'm just asking, like, who decides on what type of training is available for staff?
Well, it's anything like, for example, if you said to Jessica or Amanda, who works for you, they're your secretaries, look up what's going on in Albany regarding grant writing or whatever you're interested in. They could search out and see what functions are happening. Hopefully there's some locally that you can go to, and that's why we would sign up for training and travel and development.
Okay, because I just want to propose that we get our staff some training and development, like some team building exercises or something to kind of make the workday flow a little better so they can be more efficient in their jobs.
I'll look into it.
Okay.
All righty, and with that, but I gotta throw this in here, I'm going back to your job. This is the handout. Everything in that book is in this handout.
It's just the short titles, Council President. The actual book has the legislation, the letters, the supplemental information. That's what I'm talking about. That's the book. I mean, the handout is just another, those short titles sometimes change. Things are added to the waiver agenda. That's why if there's waiver items, I can't produce a waiver item on Wednesday. It doesn't appear till after Wednesday.
Okay. So no more questions?
Thank you.
We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.